And welcome in, newest edition of Caught Stealing, the Fantasy Baseball Podcast here at fantasyalarm.com. I'm Colby Conway at Colby R. Conway over on X, and back with me donning a new little cap there, it looks like, is Matt Selz at the Selz Man. Shout out to James Grande for stepping in last week for another pinch hit appearance. He did pretty well, Matt. I'll say his pinch hit appearance was a home run. I'll give him that. He did pretty well, but you're back. So we got the normal gang here with myself and you. So you were obviously in the Windy City for a little weekend there. Nice new cap there. So how was the weekend, and what were your takeaways from the, I believe, games plural
Yes.
that you saw?
Yes. Went to the entire Diamondbacks Cubs series.
Mhm.
It was a surprise Christmas gift for my wife, whose favorite team is the Diamondbacks.
Christmas in
Quite a
July.
lot of Diamondbacks
Love it.
fans. Quite a lot of Diamondbacks fans there, and I figure it's probably the last good weekend to travel as a family in the summer before
Mhm.
schools start and
Sure.
whatnot. And Diamondbacks are in Chicago, so not only do you have Chicago to travel to, Wrigley Field's a mecca, right? Whether you're a Cubs fan, Pirates fan, White Sox, no, you're a White Sox fan, you're in the same city, so like you should just go. Um, but yeah, it's a mecca, phenomenal ballpark. If you have the chance to go to Wrigley, fantastic. Do a non-game day tour of Wrigley, it's fantastic. Get to go down by the Ivy. Don't touch it though; they're very strict on that. Um, get to learn all sorts of interesting facts. Fantastic. Um, Overall, the baseball was interesting. It was kind of the Cubs had their chances, didn't capitalize. Shota Imanaga went almost six no hit innings or six plus no hit innings in Sunday's game. So fun time all around. Great weather, great food, great ballpark. Ready to be back talking about trade deadline stuff and a plethora of injuries that popped up this week.
Sure are. Quick question, just because I know about some tours as well, not in the
Yes.
the baseball realm, but what was the particular reason for not touching the ivy?
You're not allowed to because the oil on your hands can turn it brown, basically ruin it.
Hmm.
And it's a national, um, not a trademark, but like a national historic site, basically, or like it's a protected. They have Wrigley
Got
Field
it.
as a whole is that. Their marquee on the front, the red marquee, is also that, so they can't ever get rid of that. And then the ivy is also one. So interesting fact though, it takes the grounds crew 2 days of hand trimming to trim the ivy and get it to look the way it does. Literally just move a ladder and go foot by foot and trim it by hand.
I love the peculiar nuances that you get with like tours. So like that one I think makes sense. I did a tour of Lucas Oil Stadium, the
Oh,
Colts stadium,
yes.
and we got to go on the field for a little bit, and their rule was you were not allowed to run. You could walk on it, you could do all you wanted, you could jump. Well, actually, I don't know if you could jump, but if you ran, they were quick to tell you no running on the field. I would love to know all of, because there's got to be nuances at every stadium when you do those tours. Like, what is it? What are the nuances? So, if you've been to a tour, put it in the comments or let us know. Tweet at us, or excuse me, post at us, post to us, include us
Post
in a
to it, I
post.
guess.
I don't
Mention
know.
us
They
in
really,
a post.
boy, they screwed that up. But at Colby R. Conway, at the Salesman, at Fantasy Alarm, any tour that you've done, what is a peculiar little nuance of it? I'm
Trying to
hoping to
remember, there's
actually,
one at Coors because I did a tour at Coors too. I'm trying to remember if there was
you can't stay too
uh,
long. It's probably
one
it.
there too. Um, yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to. I think my wife and I are planning a trip to Houston near the end of the baseball season for a Texans game, and I think we're gonna try to tour Houston's ballpark, and I'm gonna try to see what peculiar thing that they come up with on the field. Maybe it's you're not allowed to make contact with your shin anywhere in the stadium because I think they have some a little disdain now for shin
Yeah.
injuries because as we've seen with Kyle Tucker, remember when it was just a foul ball off the shin? It was a
Mm-hmm.
slight
It was a
contusion,
bruise.
hoping to avoid the IL,
It was
hoping
just a
this.
flesh wound.
It was just a minor little bump, a little scrape that wasn't going to take too long to heal. And guess what? You know when that occurred? That occurred,
May,
I think it was June. I'm pulling it up
June.
here. I have it written. His last game played was June 3rd. So basically, right in the beginning of June. It was a
Okay.
contusion. It is now July 25th, and he has still not played, not in a major league game, not in a minor league game. At what
And
point
I'm not
will they
sure what
just come out and
activities
say
he's
there was
been.
a slight fracture? At what
Yeah,
point will they come out and say that? Because it's not a bruise. It's not a
no.
bruise.
Um, I don't. I would guess it'd have to be pretty soon here, right? People are going to start asking questions. Although I will say, who was the Yankees outfielder who got the deep bone bruise in the World Series, hitting the wall, and then he came back for spring training and said he still had it, and he wound up missing time in April.
Mm,
It was a few years ago, obviously, because
yeah.
the Yankees haven't been there in a while. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Either it's a very deep bone bruise or it's a fracture. One of the two. This is taking way longer than anybody hoped for. Obviously, if he's on your fantasy team, it's been a big time letdown because you were expecting what 30-30 from Kyle Tucker or close
He was
to
on pace for it
that.
easily.
So he's not doing it now, obviously, unless he comes back like next week and sets the world on fire for the last 2 months of the season. I don't know what to tell people here either because it's not like he's cleared for baseball activities. Like there's some glimmer of hope, some light at the end of the tunnel here. He's not doing, and I know he's frustrated by it. I've seen him interviewed, and he's not sure exactly why it's taking this long to heal. But it's not. It's got to be a fracture at this point, right?
I would think so. So interestingly enough, when you were mentioning the Yankees, all I did was went into Google. I typed Yankees playoffs deep bone bruise because you don't got to be great in your Google searches. First thing that came up was Mark Teixeira with the deep bone bruise to the tibia, and back in 2016, that was 8 years ago. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I know it's been
And
a
then the
while. It's been a
next
while since I made
true.
a threat.
And then the next article beneath it was talking about how initially DJ LeMahieu was diagnosed with a pretty significant bone bruise, and it turned out to be a non-displaced fracture in his right foot, which just so happened to be this year. And remember how long that lingered and how many
Yeah,
times he came up for rehab? Down for a bit. Rehab
right.
assignment and then back down again.
And I'll say that based on his performance, it's still lingering. But
You were probably right with that one. So hopefully we see Kyle Tucker in a bit, but the jury is still out on that one. And then another one that I think maybe even more pessimistic moving forward.
yes,
I'll just kind of be blunt. There's no point to bury the lead. Do you think we see Christian Yelich again in 2024?
I don't.
I don't either.
I mean the fact that multiple national baseball writers and team beat writers have stated that there is a real possibility that he misses the rest of the season with a back surgery of some kind.
Hmm.
It can't be good, right? Usually you have like one guy out there who's the pessimist and is like, "Oh, he's got a fly bit him and now he has some disease that's going to keep," right? Like you have those one guy. The fact that you've seen multiple national guys and a couple of team beat writers for various sources all say could be a season-ending back surgery doesn't bode well. We know he's got some sort of basically non-solvable back issue, right? Like this has been a lingering thing, kind of like Mike Trout and his back. So I'm getting real concerned we're not going to see Christian Yelich the rest of the way.
Mike Trout should be making his return, but he actually only played a couple of innings and then came out with soreness. But when you've been out for a while, first little game back, honestly, not overly surprising.
Yeah, should have
It
just
might just
given him
delay
some
him a little bit.
WD-40.
Yeah, I think it's just going to delay him a little bit. I don't think it's a major thing for Trout. I'm not worried.
No, but it is.
Interest.
I think it is a major thing for Yelich, and
Yeah,
it's going to be a big blow to not only fantasy folks because he's having himself a pretty good season, um, but also the Brewers' hopes. Like this reopens the NL Central if the other teams can get their heads out of their rear ends. They they could make a run here for the Brewers. who are again kind of doing it with a little bit of smoke and mirrors, I feel like.
Yep. We'll see what happens in that Central right now. Brewers are 6 games up on the Cardinals and 7 games up on the 2024 NL Central champions. At the moment, they're in the
Yeah,
Pittsburgh
like,
Pirates.
well, hey, maybe if they would get Paul Skeens a win if he only allows, 2 runs in 8 and a third
Just
innings.
wasn't meant to be that day. That's it. Just wasn't meant to
I
be.
mean, that's a tough way to get your first loss.
Yeah.
Almost a
They'll be fine.
complete game and still lose it.
Hey, I'm not going to say anything, but looks good. They'll be fine. Interesting to see what they do at the deadline. We'll talk about them in a bit. I'm curious for your thoughts here.
Yes.
These sentences are about to be insanely wild. Of all the names in the Dodgers pitching staff, James Paxton is the one that has stayed healthy,
Yes.
and then they DFA him. This isn't necessarily killing our fantasy team. It's not more so that. It's more so just a talking point of the Dodgers starting pitching staff has been absolutely riddled with injuries all throughout the season. Even before the season began, you had Kershaw. He was already down. Then throughout the year, Glass now hit the IL. He's back. Obviously, Kershaw's back now. Yamamoto's out for a bit. Paxton is the one has stayed healthy, I can't even say anchored the rotation. He's been a steady presence. And now they DFA him. The only thing I think of is they know that guys are getting healthy. They maybe expect Walker Buehler to figure it out and Bobby Miller to figure it out, maybe. Or this just assumes what everybody already knows, and the Dodgers are going to get a starter at the deadline, if not multiple. That's the only way I can look at this. But just very interesting for them to, in a year full of injuries in their rotation, they DFA the one who remained healthy.
Yeah, they've used, I think, the second most starting pitchers this season, not including openers, because of all of their injuries. Like we knew Kershaw was going to miss time coming into the season. We knew Buehler was probably going to take a little bit to sort some stuff out, right? Knew some of their guys that they had called up last year were still coming back. Dustin May, right? Gavin Stone's been in and out. So yeah, it was definitely interesting to see that Big Maple got DFA'd. I think there's some money tied into this because the rumor is they don't want to pay him for next year, and if he starts enough innings, it's basically a vesting option, which is a little shisty given all of the guys that they decided to pay already, and they basically print money under their stadium. Yeah, and I can't imagine that he would take a trip back down to the minors, right? So I would assume that he's going to refuse his option and just be put, somebody can go sign James Paxton. Or I guess teams have 10 days to work out a trade for him. But I guess the question is, would you rather trade for him or hope that nobody else does and then sign him as a free agent if he refuses his assignment to AAA?
Yeah.
I mean, they did it so they could make room for Kershaw and Glass now, but seems pretty interesting that the healthy guy is being kicked to the curb for 2 dudes who can't stay healthy for basically the last 5-6 years.
And I mean, Paxton did have a ERA over 6 in June, and it was over 5 in July. So I from a performance standpoint, I get it.
But he was excellent against the Red Sox his last start out.
Yeah, and he had a good start to the year too. I mean, probably sub 3.5 ERA through the first 2 months of the season, about 9-10 starts there. So more good than bad for the most part. And one would think an injury might pop up again. He would have been a good one to keep around, but I think they're. I mean, everybody knows they're making a move at the deadline. It's just a matter of what starter they bring in.
They're gonna get a starter. There's a bunch that have already been listed on the trade block. Lord knows they have enough prospects to go get whoever the heck they want to and not even dent their farm system. So
what have you been saying? They could get rid of 5 of their top 5 prospects and still have a top 10 system.
If they had wanted to get Soto, they could have given away their top 6 prospects and still been the second best farm system in baseball.
Well, there you have it. So MLB trade deadline is coming up here. Let's talk a little bit about some of the big names. Simply put, are they traded, yay or nay? If you have an idea of where they're going, go ahead and throw that in there, Matt. It's this kind of your time to shine here. Just more so curious if we think they get moved or not, because we always see it. We see it especially in football. So many names are brought up, and the deadline is not usually riddled with big time names. Baseball, though, we can get some movement. The deadline is always chock full of items. And of course, we'll have the BS trades of some no-name reliever for a player to be named later or cash considerations. But we do tend to get a couple stars switching here at the in the late summer months here. So let's start with this. Let's go to probably two of the bigger names on the list. Oh, albeit from the crappy White Sox. We have Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert Jr. Are they traded, yay or nay, in your opinion? Because I know a couple weeks back I said yes, and they're going to the same place. I think they're a package deal when they get moved. That's where I stand. Where do you lie?
I would say they are both traded. I also think that they're probably a package deal. However, I think there is a dark horse for Crochet that could sneak in there. I think the Diamondbacks might be a dark horse for Garrett Crochet. I know that a lot of people are talking Orioles because everybody knows they need a starter. They have, Lord knows, a bevy of bats that they could just give away because their offense is good and they got an entire fully loaded AAA team with major league players on it. Clearly, the Dodgers need a starter, but I think the Diamondbacks have a couple of guys who are positionally blocked in their system that are pretty highly touted guys that they could package to go get Crochet, like Jordan Lawler could be moved because they love Perdomo's defense. I know he's not great with the bat, but his defense is phenomenal. And they've got Blaze Alexander, who they called up, and they've got a few other guys they can fill in. So Lawler may be moved. There's a couple of other bats down there that are positionally blocked right now, too. So they're a dark horse, but I do think Crochet gets moved. I do think Robert gets moved. The money on it being both to the same place, pretty good. If it is, I would expect both Baltimore and the Dodgers to be in play for both of them.
If they do get split, a team like Philly could be looking for at Robert as an outfielder,
Yes.
long-term guy for them too. If they get split, I still think they go together.
I still think they go together. I think they either wind up with the Dodgers or the O's could use another outfield bat as well.
And then another prized arm on the market, fellow Southpaw Tarek Skubal from Detroit, having a Cy Young year, to say the least, and he is under team control. He becomes a free agent after the 2026 season. It's going to take a haul of prospects to get Skubal, especially with Detroit somewhat still sniffing around the playoff race a little bit, to say the least. They're in the mix, but again, everybody has a price. I think that's what it comes down to. And I don't think Skubal is necessarily fully untouchable. So, yay or nay, does Skubal get moved at the deadline?
No.
I don't think so either.
I think
I've switched my stance on this.
To pay to get Skubal is you may as well go look at the other 4 or 5 arms we know are already on the market. Teams have come out and said these guys are gettable. There's a guy in that same rotation that's more gettable than Skubal. There's another starter for the White Sox outside of Crochet who's also gettable. So I don't think teams would be willing to give up the price. I mean, you're talking like a Soto-esque deal is what the Tigers want, and I think teams are very leery to give up what the Padres gave up to get Soto because they've seen how that's turned out. Right, they got a year and a half of Soto and basically didn't do anything with it. I know they made the playoffs one year, but but look at what the players that they gave up are turning into at this point.
Right.
3 of them are already in the majors, and a couple more are coming. So I don't think Skubal gets moved.
A year from now, July 25th, 2025.
Yes.
Does Skubal get dealt?
If the Tigers aren't squarely in the playoff picture, then yes.
I think next
Because
year is more likely.
you
That's
also
where
have
I
to keep
fall.
in mind they have some guys, some arms coming in their system, but that system is still fairly lean in terms of, elite talent that can open your championship window.
Yep.
So yeah, I think if they're not sniffing the playoffs next year, then Scooble gets moved.
So another guy I had on the list, and I'm assuming we don't have to spend much time on him because it's, I would say, nearly a guarantee, but Jack Flaherty's getting dealt, right?
Yes.
Okay, easy enough. Go to Miami. Jazz Chisholm Jr., big personality. That's what you're kind of getting with him, but he does have experience a few years back at second base. Now he's been in the outfield a little bit, so he can kind of help you there. Do you think Miami moves on from him?
Yes. Because they would get a couple of nice pieces for him, and there are teams that need outfield help that may not want to fork over the package it would take to get Crochet and Robert.
Yep.
And so Chisholm, who's on pace, by the way, for a 22-31 season,
Mm-hmm.
would be, let's say Baltimore doesn't want to go high end starter and package deal for Robert, and they just want to go piece a couple of moves together. I could see Baltimore making a move for Chisholm. There's a couple of teams in the there's a couple other teams in the AL East that could need him. There's some talk about will Chisholm fit into the Yankees locker room. You put up with locker room cancers for 7 years. So like, can we stop with this whole thing? I think he'd do just fine. But yeah, I think Chisholm gets dealt. I think Tanner Scott gets dealt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, who knows? They may surprise us and deal one of their starters. I don't know.
Tanner Scott's an interesting one. His name keeps coming up in the Discord, which if you're not a family member, join or subscribe to Fantasy Alarm. You get access to the Discord. You can talk with us there. But as good as Tanner Scott's been, if your league doesn't value holds, he could see a pretty substantial dip in his fantasy value
Correct.
if he
Because if
gets
he
moved
gets
somewhere and he's not
traded, he's
closing.
probably not going to a team that needs a closer. Although there are a few that could benefit. Talking about you, Chicago Cubs,
Mm-hmm.
that could benefit, but the Cubs also seem like they intend to sell. So I don't know that they're going to go get a closer at the deadline.
With the Rays, they have Randy Arozarena. If they want to make a move on him, do you think they deal him, or do you think teams don't trade with the Rays because they're scared to death that whatever move they make, they're going to be on the losing end of it?
I mean, there was that graphic that came out last week. I can't remember. I saw it on Twitter. I can't remember who tweeted it or who had it with the career war of all the guys Tampa got and the career war all of the guys they gave away have, and it's not even close. It's
Yeah.
miles and miles apart. That probably has something to do with it, but I do think that Arozarena gets dealt. I also think Zach Eflin gets dealt
Mm-hmm.
as well, because they don't want to. They're not going to want to pay the extra $7 million for Eflin next year. And if you think about it, they've got Rasmussen's coming back. They just got Shane Baz back. Taj Bradley's pitching otherworldly right now. You've got some other guys who are coming back later this year and into next year. I mean, we've talked about this on the pod that their IL is basically the third best rotation in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there's a few guys that get dealt. I think Arozarena. Now, I guess here's my question to you: where do you think Arozarena falls in the pecking order of outfielders we know are available? Because he's like the third one we've already talked about. Is he the third one on your list? Or are you going after him before Jazz, but after Robert? Or like, how are you ordering the outfielders we
Yeah,
know are available?
I would. Robert's in a tier of his own amongst the available outfielders. I think he's clearing away from there. But if we're going to look at Robert, Chisholm, and Arozarena, I think I'd have Arozarena just a smidge ahead of Chisholm. We've seen some documented success when it matters most. And if a team is acquiring him, it's not going to be the White Sox are making a deal for Arozarena. Like it's going to be a contending team that wants him for the postseason, and he's got success there when it matters most. And that's not necessarily to be like Jazz would suck in October. Not what I'm saying at
We've
all.
just not seen it.
Correct. We just haven't seen it, so it's kind of
Can
hard from there.
you
So I would put him a little bit ahead of Jazz.
Can you imagine the chaos if the Twins decide, hey, you know what we need? We need another bat, and they go get Chisholm. You have Buxton and Chisholm and Royce Lewis on the same team, all of whom do the same thing but can't stay healthy.
It'd be fun
Be
for
pure
the
chaos.
4 games they get to play together.
Also, there's a fourth outfield / DH guy. I've heard rumblings is going to get moved in Brent Rooker.
Yes, James talked about him last week. He would love to see him get moved.
So I think he's probably fourth on my list is the consolation prize because he doesn't offer the speed. Can't really play defense.
He can
The
hit, though.
power is great, but the strikeouts are insane.
Sure.
So he's clearly fourth. He also probably costs the least to acquire of that group.
And the value, we see it all the time in fantasy baseball drafts, too. It's all about the value. So, like the value, we could be talking about this purely from a player standpoint. We rank them 1, 2, 3, 4. But you look at the cost associated with it, then you start to evaluate it. We see it with keepers.
Right.
Hey, do I keep Ronald Acuna? Nah, that's a bad example. Do I keep Manny Machado with my 4th pick, or do I keep Ellie De La Cruz with my 19th?
Yeah, it's clearly De La Cruz.
Career-wise, Machado's had the better career, but also it's been longer. But right now, everybody would rather have Ellie. So, like, value is better with Ellie. So that's just what it kind of comes down here at the deadline. So last little bit with the deadline here as we see it. I'm just going to kind of open the door. Surprise deal. Do you see any team that may be like a dark horse? I know you kind of already mentioned maybe the Diamondbacks are sniffing around a potential left-handed starter. Or any other team or player that gets moved that you think is kind of just worth highlighting. That way, if it does happen, we can clip it and be like, yeah, we talked about it here on Caught Stealing.
I think the Mariners are a very interesting team to watch, specifically for a Rosarena. They've been very good. They had a 10-game lead, though they lost it in the fastest span of games in MLB history to the Astros. And then we just saw Julio Rodriguez go down with the sprained ankle. They needed some more oomph in that lineup to begin with. So I think the Mariners making a move for Randy Arozarena would make sense. They have a fairly deep system they could deal. I don't know. They've got 4 premier shortstop prospects. They could deal a couple of them and let Tampa figure out what to do with shortstops because that's what they're very good at doing. I think there's some rumors that Dave Dombrowski's looking for another starting pitcher because that's what he did in Detroit 10 years ago was he bolstered his league best rotation. But as Twitter very quickly reminded John Heyman, not John Heyman, John Morosi, they got swept by the Orioles that year in the ALDS with the Scherzer, Price, who the heck else was on that? It was like a ridiculous. All 4 of them. Verlander was in that rotation. I think all 5 of them have Cy Young awards, or 4 of the 5 have. But a real shocking move. I could see Adolis Garcia getting traded from Texas. He's not been very good this year. They have a bunch of young outfielders. I think they could move him to somebody who thinks they can fix him.
Sure. And then
what are your Pirates going to do?
They're going to buy, but
is
it'll
David
be
Bednar staying after 2 straight years of being.
Yeah, I think at this point he might, or I mean, I doubt they'll package him because I think they're gonna buy, they're gonna get a bat, but I don't think that obviously it's not gonna be Crochet or Robert. They're gonna look at like Jazz would probably be the more high end player that they would look at. I still think they're gonna come away with Taylor Ward. It's just I think that's what they're gonna end up doing. Get another bat in the lineup and think about the team too. Whomever they're gonna catch.
Trade for Nathan Eovaldi.
I think they go bat shopping more than arm shopping. Can make a case they should get an arm, but they might at some point, but I think they go bat shopping because you think about the lineup, get another righty bat in there because you do have Cabrian Hayes, Brian Reynolds will switch hit, but then you have O'Neill Cruz, lefty, Sawinski, lefty. I think they could use another righty bat because if I'm not mistaken, they are not great against left-handed pitching. I think their numbers are pretty putrid against lefties, if I'm not mistaken. So that's one thing I would look for Pittsburgh. But the one move that I make, so last week we kind of talked about second half bold predictions, James Grande and I did. And I had mentioned that I think both the Pirates and the Royals make the playoffs. Royals have a wild card spot right now, despite a subpar bullpen, to say the least.
But they got Hunter Harvey, right?
Yeah, that's great. Well, they should still make some. They should make some other moves. I think they're still shopping in the market for relievers. I think they could go splurging a little bit. Maybe they look at a Tanner Scott. Maybe they go to Cincy and look at an Alexis Diaz. And obviously you do the prospect rankings. I'm just looking at what MLB has in their top rankings here. But when I look at the Royals, 3 of their top 13 prospects as of right now are catchers. When you look at teams like the Marlins, guess who doesn't have much catching pedigree in the prospect system? Go to the Reds. Guess who doesn't have much catching prospect pedigree? If the Royals want to try to shore up that late game, not saying Alexis Diaz will make you all warm and snuggly in the 9th inning, because that's definitely not how it's going to be, though his numbers away from Great American Small Park are far better and maybe give you some optimism. Maybe the Royals trade some of their catching prospects to a catcher-needy team or some team looking for some youth in the farm system behind the dish. I think they get a reliever, and that's what they're going to have to do. You cannot have a bottom 10 bullpen ERA and expect to be a legitimate contender. It's really hard to do so.
Yep, I agree. The Dodgers, by the way, expect a lot of catching names to come out of that Dodgers system, because they've got I mean, their top prospect is Dalton Rushing, who is a catcher and a first baseman. Where is that guy going to play?
Yeah.
I mean, he's behind. You want to talk about positionally blocked? You're behind Will Smith and Freddie Freeman. Like, where are you going, dude?
And per MLB.com, the Dodgers have 2 of the top 10 catching prospects in all of baseball, just themselves. 2 of the top 10. So
yeah, exactly. So, and they've got some other guys further down too that are just as good. They just get buried because the Dodgers system is so deep. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the Dodgers a little bit more as we go into the weekend here. Waiver wire pickup and weekend streamers. Matt, what Dodgers pitcher is more likely owned than not, but if he's still available in your league, you have to add him now. No questions asked.
Correct. Clayton Kershaw is coming back. He is supposed to start. We're recording this on Thursday. I believe he's pitching today for the Dodgers. He is 78% owned on Fantrax as of this recording. So, there's 22% of leagues out there. He's available. If he's available, you need to pick him up. He is not the Cy Young Award winning Clayton Kershaw anymore. Not going to happen. What he will do is go 5 quality innings. He's going to get you a pretty good amount of strikeouts. He's going to limit the damage to ratios. And he'll be decent enough for a win, because if he can play 5 innings, the Dodgers offense will give him a shot to win any game he's pitching.
Yep.
So if he's still available, you need to add him. He's not the 200-inning Clayton Kershaw anymore, but he's still quality, and he's far better than basically anybody else you're going to find at this point on the waiver wire.
Exactly it. And if you need some offensive help, look at Tyler Fitzgerald coming out of the All-Star break. All he's done, 2 for 3, home run. 1 for 2, home run. 1 for 3, home run. 3 for 3, home run. 1 for 3. Coming out of the All-Star break, he's got a 465 WRC plus, 58.3% hard hit rate, 33% barrel rate. And overall for the season as a whole, albeit a somewhat limited sample size, he hasn't really whiffed much. Sub 12% swinging strike rate on the year. And during this little run he's on, he's actually at sub 10. And if you play on ESPN leagues, he has dual positional eligibility and likely has it in most formats, because for the year per MLB, 2 appearances at first, 6 at second, 16 at short, 3 in left and 8 in center. So likely carries outfield and shortstop eligibility for you. And he's actually creeping up on second base as well. So that could be pretty interesting there. And then a streamer option for the weekend. I'm going to Marco Gonzalez. While Arizona has been good against lefties of late, Gonzalez, last 2 starts, 2.79 ERA, 8-1 strikeout to walk ratio. Ultimately, he's boring let's just call a spade a spade. He's very boring, but he's been reliable. He's going to be in there, and I think he'll keep Arizona off balance just enough. And obviously, you were out scouting for this week's streamer option. While you didn't get to see Gonzalez, you did get to see the Arizona offense. And like you had mentioned, Imanaga, fellow lefty, gave Arizona some fits.
Yeah, they did. The first game of the series was against a lefty as well. Kind of kept him at bay until late when they kind of opened it up there. So, but yeah, Imanaga, obviously Marco Gonzalez is not in the same class as Shota Imanaga. But Imanaga, had him no hit through 5 and change. So I'm with you. I think he's in line. I think Gonzalez can get you a solid enough start. That's why he's a streamer. He's been pretty good of late. And the Diamondbacks are kind of a streaky offense right now. They're kind of starting to find their groove, but one game out of every series they seem to just lay a dud. So,
yep.
In this case, we're hoping it's against Gonzalez.
And Arizona over the last 2 weeks actually as a team has the most at bats against left-handed pitching over the last 2 weeks again, and they're only hitting, looks here, 227, a strikeout rate just below 25%, which is actually about league average. And then if we look, 286 WOBA and 82 WRC plus, so below average over the last 2 weeks against lefties. Take a chance on the boring old vet in Marco Gonzalez for your 2024 NL Central champion Pittsburgh Pirates. So that's what you want to be looking at here. Get ready for the trade deadline. Be active in your league's waiver wire and free agency, because as people are moved, like Tanner Scott, someone does have to pitch the 9th inning for teams. And even bad teams get saves. There's going to be playing time that's open. There's going to be playing time that's reduced. Make sure you stay on top of all of that. Check out everything at fantasyalarm.com. We'll be there to help you out. And if you aren't subscribed, subscribe today. Get access into our Discord so you can ask us those pressing questions for your lineup as we trudge on to fantasy baseball glory. Last but not least, like and subscribe where you listen to the podcast. Give me a follow over on X at Colby R. Conway. That is Matt Selz at the Selz Man. And we will see you next week with